friends, guys. Welcome back to our /malicious compliance for people.
Hello.
Hello, my wonderful, beautiful friends, guys. On purpose, follow exact orders to spite someone. And
This might be a new reaction for most of you, if not all of you, but well, you get to you.
in today's episode,
r/malicious compliance from Dark Fluff. Entertaining.
nightmare coworkers are getting taught lessons, guys. And one OP tells the story about the time a coworker's plan to get them in trouble backfires so hard. I hope you enjoy the stories today. Hit subscribe if you're not subscribed. And as always, you can send or link your post to this email right here. Let's dive in. Predictable over the past year due to 4 bridge closures occurring within months or weeks of each other. No date's been given for their reopening, so for the time being, short of heading off for work an hour or two ahead of time, you risk arriving a minute to 5 minutes late once or twice a week. Now, everyone's been impacted by the traffic in one way or another, which I mention because there's no way someone could feign ignorance. One coworker, though, a Karen, didn't care about legitimate reasons for my being slightly late for work every now and then, and complained so adamantly behind.
It's only 1 to 5 minutes. Though the coworker just probably hates you.
My back about it that my immediate supervisor had to write me up. Now, I knew it had to be that one coworker because they would get noticeably irritated whenever traffic conditions were brought up. They would leave the room, loudly interrupt with unimportant questions or comments, or roll their eyes. They're also known for complaining about every little thing, but despite that coworker, I love my job. So I started leaving for work an hour and a half earlier than before. My arrival time is now anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes before my shift starts. And that's when I notice the annoying coworker always arrives like 10 minutes early and always has a very convenient street parking space available. I used to park on a different side of our building before traffic got bad, and had never noticed that they had unofficially claimed that public parking spots as theirs. Most of the time, I'm at work early enough to get my pick of any spots in our always crowded parking lot. But now, I'm not parking in any other spot than theirs. And that coworker can't complain about me being late now. They know better than anyone that I'm at work way before I have to be. I've mentioned my arrival time to other coworkers with them in earshot, so they know I'm parking there out of spite. I have no idea if they've complained to our supervisor about it or not, but I really want them to have been stupid enough to complain about me taking their public parking spot away. I just love how petty OP got with their coworker, and this is what they get for opening their mouth, right? Also, in my opinion, OP should have taken it one step further and requested to start work early by 30 minutes so they can also leave early. That way, they're not wasting their own time, and that'll ensure they get to keep using that coworker spot forever.
But then, if the traffic gets bad, she'll probably figure out how to complain. The worker is arriving late. Why do an ad exist?
So many years ago, I worked at a gas station. It wasn't a big, fancy station. No, it was a satellite of a grocery store. Nothing more than a tiny kiosk next to a dozen pumps. And I have a lot of stories about that place, but only one is really appropriate for this sub. That said, my coworkers ranged from cool to worthless. This story is about one of the worthless ones. Let's call her Sandy. Now, Sandy was fairly new to our kiosk, but not to the job, having transferred over from another gas station in the company. Right out of the gate, this was a problem. She had her way of doing things, and we had ours. Naturally, Sandy tried to play boss and expected all of her new coworkers to change to suit her, not the other way around. That said, one day, it was me and Sandy on the afternoon shift. There were only ever 2 employees, so we covered each other's breaks. Normally, because I'm a team player, I would take my breaks in the little office in the back. If my coworkers needed me, all they had to do was yell. But on that particular Friday, Sandy and I had a problem. She decided to take both of her breaks at once. Now, it wasn't uncommon for us to take a 45-minute break instead of a half and a 15. but it was something we had to clear with our coworkers before doing. It was also against company policy, but we really didn't give a damn about that. So about an hour before rush hour, the busiest time of the day with the largest concentration of crappy customers, she wanted to take her break, which is fine, nothing wrong. I told her I would take my half hour
Right.
after hers. Then we'd both run tills for the rush. Well, the half an hour came and went. She didn't come back. Another half hour goes by, which I should have been on break, and she's still not back. Another 15 minutes, she comes in and she gets on the till. There was no apologies for taking a long break unannounced or for coming back late
Oh,
from that
he's
long
an
break.
asshole.
When I mentioned it, she replied, I don't know why you're getting so pissy. All you ever do is sit in the back. And I wouldn't get upset with you if you took a long break. So I told her,
You would, and you do.
I'll hold you to that. Then I walked out. I bought a paper, went down the street to a Japanese restaurant, sat down with a big bowl of noodles and veggies, and I took my sweet time. All the 9 to 5ers on their way home from work were her problem. Exactly 45 minutes after I left, I walked back into the kiosk, and Sandy was not behind the till. My manager was. Apparently, Sandy couldn't handle the situation, and she started crying. I
Oh,
don't know if it was just me walking out,
right.
or the workload, or any particular customer that got to her. She called my manager for help, and my manager had to drive into town and take over until I came back. Let's call her Tammy. Now, Tammy wasn't angry with me, not anymore at least. She was pretty pissed when she showed up to relieve Sandy and sent the poor girl home, but she had found a brief window in which to check the security cameras. It turns out that Sandy told her that she had taken her half-hour break earlier. Then I didn't bother taking mine until the rush because I didn't want to work. Tammy then decided to check on the cameras, and by the time I came back, she already knew that Sandy was lying to her. I didn't have to say a damn thing in my own defense. Sandy ends up getting punished for the extra long break and the lying, which resulted in her getting fired, as she's had a few strikes already. Good times. Cameras are truly a liar's worst enemy, aren't they? And Sandy totally deserved what happened after lying to the manager. That said, though, I feel that Sandy can't handle 45 minutes by herself and had to call the store manager for help. She might not have been a good fit for that position. I guess you could also say that Opie made her break under pressure.
Uh,
So I used to work a crappy retail job in LA, and the boss had just hired a new assistant manager. Just picture a blonde Karen who appears to be in her 40s but tells everyone she's 33, who is just divorced from her Beverly Hills doctor or dentist husband and now has to actually work for the first time in her life. So on her first week there, this super smart lady left her Louis Vuitton bag open on the break room table instead of locking it in her assigned locker, and someone stole $200 from her purse. Now, I'm not saying it was her fault. It was definitely the thief's fault for taking something that didn't belong to them. But Karen's response to it was just stupid. Assistant Manager Karen then told us that as a new policy, no one could enter the break room without her permission, so that she would know who was going in and when. So if anything else was stolen, she would have a clear culprit. Now, I'm not sure how she intended to enforce this during the time she wasn't in the store, but maybe it didn't matter if other people besides her got stolen from. Well, we obviously didn't like Karen strutting into our workplace and trying to limit our access to our own break room, so cue malicious compliance. Every time our hands were sticky and we needed to wash them in the break room sink, we interrupted Karen. Every time we needed to take a drink of water, which we were only allowed to do in the break room, we interrupted Karen. Every time we needed to sweep something up, but the broom was in the break room, we interrupted Karen. Every time we had to throw something away, but the trash can was in the break room, we interrupted Karen. Karen could barely get her own inventories and paperwork done because of how often we needed her permission to open the break room door. She ended up getting so frustrated that the new policy lasted about 3 days, and she quit soon after that. Honestly, Karen probably got sick and tired of working with the common folk, right? Those lowly peasants. Okay, jokes aside though, classic malicious compliance. And what an ultimate Karen move though. She leaves her purse in the open despite being told to keep her possessions in her locker and basically tried to make
and you could have put it in the locker. making the entire situation useless.
Everyone's lives harder after someone stole from her, which she could have easily prevented. This person says, I would have made sure to call her at home on time she wasn't working. Karen, I'm taking a break now. I'm going to the break room.
I don't
Karen,
think they have our phone number.
I need to wash my hands. I'm going to the break room. Even after she quit,
And I think she would call the police.
I'd call her for a week or so, maybe longer. See, and this is why you don't mess with some people. Some people will, in fact, go the extra mile to make sure you really get the point. So, for a bit of context, I'm a 25-year-old female, and I work as part of the sanitation department for a hospital. We have multiple positions, most of which work on upkeeping the cleanliness of the general areas of the hospital. We take out trash from nurses' stations, patient rooms, replace linen, clean the hallways and floors, as well as clean bathrooms daily. My position was what we call a float worker. Essentially, I've been trained in every area, and I'll be assigned to cover people who call in sick, taking days off, or on vacations. This also comes with a lot of hurdles, such as trying to remember what needs to be done in every area, as we've got approximately nearly 30 different areas. So sometimes I need to ask supervisors for a quick refresh on things that need to be accomplished over the day. The downside to my position is I won't know until I show up to work where I'll be for the day. I didn't mind this, as it allows me to see a vast amount of the hospital and build rapport with nursing staff and doctors all around. Usually, if I'm covering for someone's vacation or time off, I'll know ahead of time, as my posted schedule will have me in their position for the time. So about a year and a half ago, I was scheduled to cover one of our guys who works in the operating room for about a month. And for a little more context here, our OR team consists of 4 people. One person comes in at 6, my position, which came in at 8, and 2 other positions that came in at 9 and 11. Now, I didn't mind this, as I was well acquainted with the staff there. On top of that, working for the OR usually came with a fair bit of free time, since there wasn't a whole lot to do, other than ready the room for the next patient that's coming through. There was one downside, though, the Karen of the story, who we'll call Steve. He happens to be 56. Steve was our afternoon guy. He came in at 11 o'clock, and the shift usually ended at 7:30. Now, Steve is a scumbag. He's the sort of person who looks down on you if you're struggling. If you did something a little too slow, he'll call the supervisor. If you're overrun with work and you can't get to your other tasks, he would call the supervisors. On top of that, he's told me at least twice that I'm not built for working and that I should be in the kitchen at home preparing
So sexist to
preparing dinner for my husband. Steve was the reason not a lot of people like to learn how to work positions in the OR. If the constant calling of supervisors wasn't enough, he would insist on commenting on how you did things to try to teach you better ways of cleaning if you weren't being absolutely efficient. The guy would harass people constantly, especially the women, asking them if they'd done.
I mean, like, of course. A rude male boss will always. These are rats, whoever. No HR in there.
This or that, and most of all, he loved to boss everyone from our department around. Our other OR guys have gotten used to this by now, and they just ignore him for the most part. But I, on the other hand, love to piss him off a little, just for fun. The first week of my month-long stint in the OR went without a problem from Steve, as I'm normally very diligent about my work, so I don't leave stuff too long to give him any reason to talk to me. The second week is where the malicious compliance takes place. It was one of the busiest weeks of the OR for the year, where we would normally average just under 35 cases a day in our 10-room OR. This week, we averaged 52 a day. Cases were concluding in record time as nurses and doctors wanted to get the hell out of Dodge before any extra cases could be added on. This meant that our little team of 4, myself, Steve, and 2 other guys, were cleaning a room right in time to then clean another room. This was the most stressed that I've ever seen any of these guys be. But Steve, worst of all, around noon, rooms were coming out, and our early shift guy had just come back from his lunch. We cut through the 2 rooms we had left, and I made a quick round of my area to make sure things weren't in shambles before I started to plan on heading to lunch. My area was as tip-top as it could be, so I checked the board before letting the guys know that I was heading to lunch, since we had some free time before more cases came out. Everyone was okay with this, except for Steve, surprisingly. The guy stopped me, and this was the back and forth that ensued.
Was it
Steve
really
says to
surprising?
me, "Wait, have you checked your sinks?" I say to him, "Yes, I scrubbed them before the morning rush." He says, "How about the trash cans?" I tell him, "My goodness, yes, I checked on them. One of them is half full, but I don't see half an hour making that full. Now, can I go? I don't want to leave." He then says, "What about your hallways? Did you dust them?" I tell him,
Of
"Yes,
course.
I did. Now please leave me alone. I need to get to lunch before." He then stops me and says, "How about your high dusting? Did you get..." And this is when I stop him and say, "Steve, I'm going to
I feel like he just lost that week and needed something to make a human more sad about. If he does
ask
that,
you once and only once. You need to mind your damn business. You're not my boss, and you worry about your own area." And with that, I walked away, and Steve did not like that at all. I was 10 minutes into my lunch in the OR's break room, halfway through my food, when our department director walks in. She walks over to me, taps me on the shoulder as I had earbuds in, and she told me to meet her in her office after lunch. I asked her what it was about, and she said we'd talk about it when I got down there. Now, I was pissed, to say the least.
it feels like you're getting called like by the principal as a kid.
I knew that little rat had probably told our director that I hit him or something, and he was going to use my outburst as, quote, a threat that caused him undue mental harm, and that he didn't feel comfortable working around me if I was going to act like that. He's done this before. Now, mind you, I'm a 5'4", 130-pound woman, and Steve is 6'3", probably 230 pounds. As I
Wow, so he's a bitch.
was finishing my food and watching my episode, I peeked at the monitor on the wall that kept track of patients coming into the room and leaving. Every single room was currently closing up their cases, which meant that my OR team was about to get effing rocked. I actually panicked for a moment, and then I remembered what happened with Steve, and I couldn't help myself from laughing a bit. Cue the sweet, sweet malicious compliance. I put my lunch bag away with the other bags in the back of the break room, and then took the last sip of my soda as I tossed it and then walked out with a grin on my face. On my way to the elevators, I saw they had only done 1 room so far, and judging on that, I assumed it would probably take them another half an hour to get everything finished for the rooms. Steve saw me on my way out, and he stopped me saying, "OP, what are you doing? Where are you going? Get your hairnet on. We have 9 other rooms that need to get cleaned." At that, I respond, "Oh, I'm so sorry, Steve. I was asked to come down to the office by our director. She had something she wanted to discuss with me, and she told me I had to come immediately after my lunch and not worry about the..." He then stops me and says, "But we are getting overrun
Shut up, you little ass bitch.
with work. You need to help us." This is when I respond, "I don't see how that's currently my issue. If I don't talk with her, I might get fired for insubordination, so good luck. I'll try to be as fast as I can." I then smiled as I turned away. I got down to her office, and the director is sitting there with one HR representative. She motions me to close the door and sit down, so I do. And surprise, surprise, she called me in to talk to me about the fact that someone, of which she couldn't technically name, came to her with a complaint about a hostile encounter, which made the person feel uncomfortable. At that, I laughed a bit, and I told them what happened from my point of view. The director then just kind of put her head in her hands, and the HR rep had to stifle a chuckle. It then got quiet for a few moments, so I asked if I was going to lose my job over this. Our director said that originally it was going to be a strike on my record, followed by some disciplinary actions, such as taking some online courses about conflict in the workplace and hostile work environments.
The
But
fact
after hearing my side of the story, along with a plethora of other reports made by Steve about other people in the department, she said she finally realized that she shouldn't have gotten HR involved until she heard my side of things.
Oh, you realized? After it sounded like he done it like 50 fucking times, and he never looked at the situation. Sure, buddy. Sure.
And then dismissed both the rep and myself. As I walked after the rep, I remember those times he looked down on me for being a woman and made those comments. Instead of heading back upstairs to the crap show that awaited me, I closed the door, turned back around, and then sat down. She looked up from her laptop and asked what I needed. I just smiled and said, I would like to lodge a complaint about Steve. Hearing that, she stared at me for a few moments and then asked me to detail my complaint. And here's the list of things that I got her to put in the complaint. Number 1, micromanagement of peers. Number 2,
join me in looking toward the future. This is a great American masterpiece.
Leonardo da Vinci was a great paperwork got in the way. What if he used this?
creating a hostile workspace. Number 3, unnecessary reporting of coworkers. Number 4, workplace bullying. Number 5, misogyny. Number 6, sexual misconduct. As he once told me that I like other women because, quote, you don't have a guy who could F you good enough. So after going through the list, providing examples and approximate dates for said examples, my director just kind of shook her head and put her fingers up to her temple. I looked at her and I said, bad day to be Steve? She nodded and said, yeah, it's a bad day to be Steve.
I'm just surprised this happened before. What I gotta really say. Before.
You can head back to work. I'll talk to him before I leave for the day. So with that, I leave the office. I head back up to the OR a whopping hour later, and our OR team looked effing dreadful. Even our morning guy, who's in his mid-30s and has been doing this for a decade, was looking rough. They finished all the rooms, though, which was impressive. They all looked at me, and Steve was the first to say anything. He said, took you long enough, bitch. Where were you? To which I respond, oh, don't worry, you'll find out soon enough. My meeting with the director went well. Morning guy asked, what happened? I let him know, well, somebody filed a complaint about me being aggressive, and it ended up turning into a conversation that would definitely eliminate the hostile work environment. Hearing me say that, Steve smiled and said, good.
I was going to say something crazy.
The last thing we need is somebody to feel uncomfortable up here. To which I respond, oh, of course, Steve. We wouldn't want anyone feeling attacked or anything, right? Also, Steve, I have a question for you. Have you checked your break room yet? The last I saw, the trash was overflowing onto the floor. Steve left in a panic, and the three of us just laughed. And here's the fallout. I was informed from our director what happened with Steve. Since I was the person who levied the complaint, I was entitled to hear about any actions taken to correct what I complained about. She said that he would have been outright fired if I wasn't the only one who levied these complaints. While they took it seriously regardless, without other women stepping forward to say anything, they couldn't fire him off my complaints alone. That being said, Steve was still reprimanded hard. He was slapped with 2 strikes. 3 strikes gets you fired, followed by a year's worth of online learnings and in-service trainings for things like discrimination and basically how to be a better person in the workforce. He was also told if he said anything.
The only reason why that sounds actually good is because I know this is the anti discretion, and I studied too much. Courses are going to sound like hell for him. It's not going to do anything.
Anything
But
close
it's
to what he
going
said
to
to me
hurt.
again, he would be fired and blacklisted from the hospitals in the state. In good news, since then, I've become a lead for our day shift. While I maintained my float status, covering people who were sick and whatnot, I did gain a few more dollars an hour and some leadership responsibilities. And most important of all, a fancy title to tell Steve to F off with. Talk about a plan backfiring. And seriously, I just don't know what's up with people like Steve who on purpose do that to other coworkers. Like, are you trying to make enemies at work? Also, I think OP should have tattled right then and there to their director after Steve made the "where were you, bitch" comment. Especially it being said in front of witnesses. Like, that could have been the strike needed to get nasty Steve out of there. Another thing, like, if Opie really wanted to piss Steve off, after him making those comments about her needing to be at home in the kitchen making food for her husband, Opie should have replied with, "Well, what about you, Steve? Why is your full-time job cleaning? Isn't that women's work?" Oh man, I just know his head would have exploded. Like, don't go saying stupid stuff like that if you can't take it, right? This happened a couple of years ago, but I was thinking about it recently. I worked for a company doing media design, graphic design, photography, live event AV, video editing, etc. This company held big events, and over my years at the company, I was given more and more unrelated responsibilities until I was doing the jobs of at least 4 people. They also never helped pay for any materials, so all the necessary media equipment was paid for out of pocket. All of them had my name on them to make sure it wouldn't get lost if I lent it out. Over the years, I accumulated a pretty impressive supply through secondhand purchases and watching for deals. By the time I hit my 5th year there, I had thousands of dollars in high-end equipment that was used for almost every part of the organization's promotion.
So I don't exactly.
This happened a couple of years ago, but I was thinking about it recently. I worked for a company doing their media design, graphic design, photography, live event AV, video editing, etc. This company held big events, and over my years at the company, I was given more and more unrelated responsibilities until I was doing the jobs of at least 4 people. They also needed for any materials, so all the necessary media. All of them had my name on them to make
Wait 1 second.
necessary media equipment was paid for out of pocket. All of them had my name on them to make sure it wouldn't get lost if I lent it out. Over the years, I accumulated a pretty impressive supply through secondhand purchases and watching for deals. By the time I hit my 5th year there, I had thousands of dollars in high-end equipment that was used for almost every part of the organization's promotion and event production. I think you can see where this is going. One day, I was brought into my boss's office, and I was told they would be downsizing and they had found someone fresh out of college with no real life experience. And that person will be taking over my job, as well as a few others. Now, I was completely caught off guard. They then had one of those people from corporate follow me to my office to assist in cleaning out my stuff. The guy specifically said, "Take everything that's yours. You won't be coming back." So that's what I did. They clearly expected the usual paper box of some photos and a plant. But instead, I had them hauling crate after crate of our media and event supplies to my car. I had a 2004 Ford Explorer at the time, and by the time I left, it was filled to the brim. With every box that we took out to my car, my boss began to get more and more panicked. The guy actually said to me, "You can only take things that are yours." And through my sadness and anger, I was able to find it in me to kindly tell him that every single thing I was taking was mine, and that I kept all the receipts if he wanted proof. The final nail in the coffin was when I told him I would need access to the arena's AV booth and catwalk. I can still remember the fear in his eyes. We went up and I unplugged all of my cameras that I'd been lending to my events team, all of which were clearly marked with my name. I felt like the Grinch, just walking around and taking all the random things in the building that had my name on them. Driving away, I was heartbroken that a company I gave 200% to in every way had picked somebody younger and
Well, that's just the idea of capitalism. Unless you're a socialist, you're not. In really, you actually think a company is actually going to let you spend decades in there, unless you're willing to be abused. And by that chance, they're gonna probably still replace you with some college age graduate. Well, get back to the workforce.
Fresh out of college to replace me. But I won't lie, the smugness of washing their face as I stripped the place bare was worth it. And looking back on it, that was the worst and most toxic job I've ever had. The company only lasted another year before they folded entirely, and I'd like to believe I had a hand in that. And to think, if they had just compensated me fairly and purchased the necessary things themselves, instead of forcing me to provide my team with things, they wouldn't have had to start from scratch. Don't you guys just love stories where employees get fired and the owner quickly realizes that they need that employee so bad? And to be a fly on the wall when OP took back their thousands of dollars worth of equipment that the company was why they shut down. It was well deserved. And that, my friends, brings us to another.
Okay, so this is it. By every metric, it is it. In a way, I kind of wish we could do more. But in a part of the way, I gotta re-end this. Sorry. Sorry, guys. Oh, this is Mickey and Becky. This is the Tada Show. We really didn't thought you would choose us. We were called the crappiest of the bunch, but now we're the show. Yippee! Until the end.